Have you ever experienced a moment where you felt completely humiliated, only for the tables to turn in the most unexpected way? Well, that's exactly what happened to one young black woman who walked into her local bank, just trying to deposit some money. What should have been a simple transaction quickly spiraled into a humiliating encounter. As she stood at the counter, the bank staff mocked her, questioning her ability to handle something as basic as a deposit. The way they treated her was downright demeaning, as if she didn't belong in that space at all. But then something incredible happened. Just when the situation seemed like it couldn't get worse, the staff's demeanor shifted in an instant, almost as if they'd seen a ghost. The reason for their sudden change? They had no idea who this young woman really was. As it turns out, she wasn't just any regular customer. Her father owned the very bank that was treating her like an outsider. In that single moment, their attitude shifted from judgment to fear. But how did this play out? Stay tuned to find out how this powerful twist completely turned the situation around, leaving everyone in shock. To understand what led to that shocking moment, we need to take a step back. This wasn't just a random encounter. The young woman, let's call her Maya, had been a loyal customer of this bank for years. Every time she walked in, it was clear that she wasn't treated the same way as others. While the staff often greeted other customers with a smile, Maya had to deal with subtle glances and dismissive tones. It was as if they didn't think she belonged in the space, an uncomfortable feeling she'd grown accustomed to, but never truly understood. Her father, a highly successful businessman, had started the bank years ago, building it from the ground up. Yet despite his status, Maya always felt disconnected from the world he had built. She had always been just his daughter, not the daughter of a powerful figure. But that day, she walked into the bank with a simple goal: deposit some money and go about her day. What she didn't expect was the level of scrutiny she would face. The teller, a woman who barely looked up from her computer, scrutinized her every move, questioning everything from her account to the deposit amount. It wasn't until a manager walked over, pale-faced and stammering, that the tension began to rise. The staff's attitude completely shifted, but why? What did they know now that they didn't before? As Maya stood there, feeling the cold eyes of the bank staff on her, she could barely believe what was happening. The whisper started when the manager, who had hurried over to the counter, caught sight of Maya's last name on the deposit slip. A ripple of recognition spread through the room. The manager's expression faltered, his usual stern demeanor shifting into something more nervous. He fumbled with the paperwork in his hands, trying to recover from the awkwardness that had suddenly descended. Maya's mind raced. What was going on? Why had their attitude changed so suddenly? It wasn't until the manager, now visibly sweating, leaned in and whispered something to the teller that things took a dark turn. The teller's face went pale. The room felt as though it had frozen in time. Maya, standing there in the middle of the tension, had no idea what had just unfolded. Unbeknownst to her, the bank staff had assumed she was just another regular customer, someone who didn't belong in their elite space. But once they realized her true identity, once they connected the dots between her last name and her father's ownership of the bank, their attitude shifted from dismissal to panic. Maya had always felt like a shadow in her father's world, never fully part of the banking elite he'd built. But now, in the very place that he'd helped create, she was being treated with a level of fear she hadn't expected. What was worse was that Maya had never been made aware of how her father's status had changed the way people saw her. She'd lived in his shadow for so long, not fully understanding the weight of his influence. And now this was her first real glimpse into the strange, unspoken world he had built around himself. Maya's heart raced with confusion, anger, and embarrassment, unsure of how to navigate the tension that had gripped the bank. She could feel the weight of every eye on her. But there was one thing that puzzled her. Why had they treated her like this to begin with? Was it because of her race? Was there something deeper about the way they viewed her? Something she hadn't yet figured out? The questions lingered, unanswered, hanging in the air as the manager struggled to regain control of the situation. Maya's instincts told her something was off, but what could she do? The tension in the bank was palpable. Maya could feel her face burning as the manager continued to avoid eye contact, his hands shaking as he desperately tried to smooth over the awkwardness. His voice cracked when he finally spoke, apologizing for the confusion with her deposit. But Maya wasn't buying it. The words didn't make sense, and his sudden panic told her there was more going on beneath the surface. She crossed her arms, waiting for some kind of explanation. But the manager's fidgeting only made her feel more uncomfortable. It was clear he was trying to avoid something, a truth he didn't want to confront. Her mind raced. Was this about her race? Was it about the fact that she didn't look or act like the other wealthy, well-dressed customers who frequented the bank? Maya had always felt out of place in her father's world, but she never realized how much it affected those around her. Had the staff been underestimating her all along, simply because of the way she presented herself? Or was it something more sinister? Maya needed answers, and she needed them now. Without thinking, she leaned forward. "What's really going on?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Why are you all acting like this?" The manager's eyes widened, but before he could respond, another staff member, one who had been lurking in the background, stepped forward, her face pale as a ghost. "Maya," she said quietly, "your father, he didn't tell you." The words hit Maya like a slap in the face. Her heart skipped a beat. What was she missing? Why was the staff acting like they knew something she didn't? She tried to piece it together, but the silence in the room seemed to suffocate her thoughts. She felt like an outsider in her own life. And then, just as the manager opened his mouth to speak, a new voice cut through the air. The door to the back office opened, and there stood her father, completely unaware of the storm brewing in the lobby. His expression was one of surprise when he saw his daughter standing at the counter. Maya's mind raced. What was going to happen now? Would he defend her? Or was there something he wasn't telling her? The staff froze, caught between Maya's piercing gaze and her father's sudden presence. The room was suffocating, each passing second stretching into eternity. And as Maya's father walked toward her, the air was thick with a question that no one had answered yet. What would he do when he found out how his own bank had treated his daughter? Maya's father stepped into the room, his usual confident stride faltering for just a moment when he saw the tense atmosphere. The staff, who had been on edge from the moment Maya walked in, now seemed to shrink back. It was as though they were bracing for something, but Maya couldn't quite understand what. Her father's presence should have been a comfort, but instead it only seemed to heighten the growing unease. He looked around, taking in the discomfort in the room, his eyes narrowing as he registered the strange tension between his employees and his daughter. "Maya," he asked, his voice carrying a note of concern. "What's going on here?" Before she could respond, the manager, who was now visibly sweating, finally spoke up, stammering as he tried to explain. "There's been a misunderstanding, sir. Your daughter was just, trying to make a deposit, but there was some confusion about her account. It's all been sorted out now." Maya's blood boiled. She knew that wasn't the truth, and something in the way the manager spoke made her doubt everything she had ever known about her father's business. The unease in her chest grew heavier with each passing second. Her father's face, usually a mask of control, was now a portrait of discomfort. He couldn't seem angry, but rather unsure. For the first time, Maya wondered if he was as much a stranger to her as the bank staff. Just as she opened her mouth to demand an explanation, the second twist hit her like a punch to the gut. The manager, unable to hold back any longer, blurted out, "Sir, we didn't know she was your daughter. If we had, we would have handled things differently." Maya's heart skipped. She thought she understood the tension earlier. She thought she knew what had been going on. But now this revelation shattered everything she thought she knew about her father's world. Did her father's wealth and influence truly mean so little to the people who worked for him? Had they been looking down on her all along, or was this something even darker? Her mind raced. Could it be that her father's legacy at the bank wasn't as solid as she had always believed? Was there a divide between him and his employees that ran deeper than she could have imagined? And what was it about her asterisk specifically that made her so invisible to everyone, even her own father's staff? Before she could process any of this, a woman from the back office stepped forward, her eyes darting nervously between Maya and her father. "Sir," she began, her voice trembling, "there's something else you should know." The room seemed to go silent, every person holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. Maya's stomach churned. Whatever it was, she wasn't prepared for it. The woman from the back office took a deep breath before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, we were told to treat her like this. We didn't know she was your daughter, but even if we had, there were orders. Orders from above." Maya's pulse raced. What was she hearing? Her mind struggled to piece together the words. Her father's expression shifted from confusion to anger, but Maya could see something else in his eyes: guilt. The truth was coming to light, but it wasn't the truth she had expected. "Orders from above," her father repeated, his voice dangerously calm. "What do you mean by that?" The woman swallowed hard, clearly torn between her loyalty to the bank and the gravity of what she was about to reveal. The higher-ups, they've been pushing for a certain type of clientele. People who fit their image of the perfect customer. Your daughter, sir, doesn't fit that image. Maya's chest tightened. All this time, she felt like an outsider in her father's world, but she had never suspected it ran this deep. The bank, which he had built with his own hands, was now alienating her, not because of her ability or her intelligence, but because of some invisible standard that she didn't meet. Her father's face turned ashen. He looked at the staff, his anger barely contained. "You mean to tell me that my own employees were following orders to mistreat my daughter because she doesn't look like the right kind of person?" he asked, the disbelief clear in his voice. The staff looked down, unable to meet his gaze. Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. The betrayal she felt was suffocating. She had always admired her father's success, his ability to navigate a world of power and wealth, but now she was seeing him for what he really was. A man who had built a system that didn't even see his own daughter as worthy. And then, just as the air in the room seemed to freeze, a new voice broke through the silence. "Maybe it's not just the bank's fault," the voice said. Maya turned to see the manager, who was now standing straighter, his face pale but resolute. "I know what you're thinking," he continued, locking eyes with Maya. "But I'm not just following orders from the top. There's something else, something about your father's dealings that you don't know." Maya felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The manager hesitated for a moment, clearly weighing his options. "Your father, he's been having financial difficulties. The bank has been in trouble for a while now. And the higher-ups, they wanted to protect the image, to push out people who didn't fit the perfect mold. It's all about image and influence now, Maya. Not about the people who built the bank from the ground up." The truth hit her like a ton of bricks. Her father, the man who had always seemed invincible, was struggling, and in his desperation, He had allowed his own bank to become a place that rejected the very people who had been loyal to it. Maya felt like the floor had been pulled out from under her. But just as the weight of this new reality began to settle in, a final twist emerged. From the back office, a man stepped forward, someone Maya had never seen before. He was sharply dressed, with a cold, calculating smile that sent a chill down her spine. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It seems you finally figured it out, Maya. Your father's empire is crumbling, and now it's too late to fix anything." Maya's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" The man stepped forward, his smile widening. "I'm the one who's been pulling the strings for the last few years. Your father's troubles have been my opportunity. Now I'm taking control of the bank, and I'm making sure people like asterisk you asterisk never get in the way again." Maya's entire world seemed to shift. This wasn't just about a simple bank transaction anymore. Her father's legacy was in the hands of a man who had been plotting this takeover for years. And in that moment, Maya realized that her fight wasn't just for respect or recognition. It was for the very future of the institution that had always defined her family. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined, and the battle was just beginning. Maya stood there, her heart racing as the man revealed himself to be the mastermind behind her father's downfall. The weight of it all crashed down on her. Her father, the powerful businessman she'd always looked up to, had let things slip out of his control. But Maya wasn't going to let him lose everything without a fight. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "You're not taking this bank, not without a fight," Maya said, glaring at the man. The shock on his face was fleeting as Maya turned to her father, who was still reeling from the revelation. "Dad, it's time to stop hiding behind the image. We fix this together." With a newfound resolve, Maya took charge. The manager, seeing the genuine strength in her, began to reconsider his loyalty to the manipulative outsider. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Maya and her father rallied the loyal staff, cleaning house, and exposing the corrupt dealings that had festered beneath the surface. In time, they restored the bank's integrity, one based on fairness, respect, and equality for all. As Maya looked out from her father's office, watching the bank's future shift, she realized something important. The world wasn't always kind, but it was up to her to redefine what success truly meant.